white woman with hair. Niggas don't take precedence over that. Period. See that got way out of hand, and see, of course, this is all Monday morning quarterbacking I'm doing here, but see, a person has to be conscious. These are life-changing things. People have to be aware of that. Things come out of nowhere. You have to be on your toes all the time, and you got to always come up with the what-ifs in just a few minutes, and you can't look at it like you got anybody on your side. So everything has got to be almost, hey, open and shut. Then when the lady started tossing her hair back there, that's got to be thought of immediately. Oh, here we go. Here's a life-changing incident. Everybody involved in here now is going to be, they're going to be dogged with this incident the rest of their lives. That's the way to look at it.
So right now with the red shirt, it looks me in my eye, directly in my eye, and said, "You're next."
White woman tossing her hair on some black people and whatnot in a restaurant full of white people and all like that. You think you're going to get the best of that story? Not at all. That's the way you're supposed to be thinking. This is a war situation here, and we're surrounded by enemies. With reinforcements coming. Now, if you're not prepared to kill everybody who's an aggressor, you don't show no signs of aggression. You surrender in that situation. Have to.
When you say surrender, what do you mean?
You don't make no protest. I wouldn't. That white woman tossing her hair over there, I would go and ask for another booth or something if I couldn't sell it with her. If I asked her not to do that, she says she's not going to do it, kiss her, whatever. I would just go and say, well, I need another booth because we're having a problem over here. Okay. And if they don't want to give me another booth and all like that, well then, hey, maybe this ain't the place I should be, no way. That's just the way it is. Your antenna has got to be up. That, this race thing doesn't go away. It dominates everything. That's got to be in your mind all the time. Now, that's a terrible way to have to be in the world, but that's what I talk about. That's the world that we're in. And when everything is relatively quiet and whatnot, people call in the programs and all like that and say, well, hey, he's old school and whatnot, and he's making it all up. That ain't got nothing to do with what's happening now. My experience has been this, and my experience has been that, and that's when you drop your guard. And that's when you lose your job, and 5 years later, you are in the lockup on account of your financial situation has gone completely to pot for the rest of your life. That's how they do it. It ain't by magic. It's all by plan. And that white woman would say, yeah, I just tossed my hair on them niggas, Hey. White woman with hair. Niggas don't take precedence over that. Period. You got to learn the hard way. They did.
Context of white supremacy. Justice Gus T Renegade in for another broadcast to share constructive information on the system of white supremacy. Today's date, Sunday, June 17th, 2012. So I have been told. Thank you everybody for tuning into the program. I hope it is a constructive investment of your Sunday evening / Sunday afternoon. I was really bothered. I guess I'm still bothered because I'm talking about the audio issues with the sound clip yesterday. I think that sound clip was clear. I hope it was crystal clear. Before we get started, just to emphasize, people that have been listening to the program, I don't know, some people have been listening the whole time. We've been on 3+ years. Some people just came in the last couple of weeks. Either you have heard or you will hear Gus make some comments about how we need to drastically alter our behavior with regards to white people. And some people have heard that and said, that is, Gus, you are being crazy. You're taking it too far. And I don't agree with that. As Mr. Fuller said, that hasn't been my experience. And you're talking about something from way back. Maybe that's the way we should have behaved in the 1960s or 1950s. But this is 2012 and it's just not that serious. Or, you're talking about you being comfortable, not going out and having a good time. I'm going to the club. I'm going to the party and I'm going to have fun. I'm not just going to sit up, stay cooped to myself and not have a good time just because there might be a handful of white people who are stupid and racist. I hope that this program will emphasize that you really cannot afford to not truthfully acknowledge the awesome, and I am using that word specifically. You cannot fail to recognize the awesome power that white people wield in all areas of people activity at all times. I wouldn't care if it is a minimum wage worker at McDonald's. I wouldn't care if it's the garbage man. I wouldn't care if it's the governor of your state, the mayor, whatever the case may be. If it is a white person, they can put a hurting on you real quick, and it probably would take less than 10 minutes to totally mess up your life, and I suspect many of your family and friends. We will see as the program proceeds whether or not that is hyperbole, if Gus is just exaggerating about the power that white people have. Also, I hope this program, as I've said consistently, one of the reasons that I use the term white supremacy, non-white people, we have a tendency to front. We have a tendency to not be honest about our weak and vulnerable position as it relates to white people. And until that changes, I will be sticking with the term white supremacy to help erode our tendency to not be honest with ourselves, because I have seen consistently when it comes down to the come down, non-white people, black people, we end up being the ones who are in a world of hurt when we end up in conflict with white people consistently without fail. Getting to today's broadcast, if you've been listening to the program for a while, we had an incident that happened at the very beginning of the year. We did our call-in program right at midnight for 2012 back on January 1st, and we had a listener, investor, called in to talk about an incident of terrorism that happened to himself and some other victims, just white people. The Voltron Effect, a gang of white people assaulting non-white people, and just what a terrible situation it was. And I had said then that I hoped we could get some of the victims to come on and kind of give us more details about what happened in that situation, what they learned, what decisions they would alter, knowing what they know now, what decisions they would make given the information that they've now got about how dangerous white people can be. It took some time, but we were able to make that program happen. Truthfully, that incident has continued. And again, this will go to, you'll hear the details as we roll, but this incident, 5 minutes, what was kicked off by a white woman. I think that's another point that I emphasize. White women are masterful. They are extraordinarily dangerous, and I have seen no one who can coordinate violence against black people like white women. And frequently, you don't even need the plural. Frequently, it can be one white woman can galvanize violent, terroristic white people in the blink of an eye. Real pleasure to do this program, and I'm going to emphasize consistently as we go, I am not blaming any of the victims who were involved. They are victims. I'm simply hoping to emphasize, mightily emphasize as much as I can as a victim. You really got to have that antenna up. As Mr. Fuller said, you cannot afford to be lax at any time on the plantation, especially when you're around white people. Heaven forbid if you're around a white person or white people who have been drinking. Joining us, one of the victims in this incident. Real pleasure to have her on the program. I think she's been listening to the broadcast as well. I've been kind of speaking with her and in touch throughout this incident, and just really happy that she could take some of her time to share with us this evening. I'm also touched. She took a part of her day to hang out with her attempted father and just to show him some appreciation for his efforts at being a parent under the worst of conditions, racism, white supremacy. I was glad to hear that, and I hope other people were able to do the same. Real pleasure to have her on the broadcast, one of the female victims in that situation. Female victim, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Groovy. I don't know how you would like to be referenced for the program. If you want to keep anonymity, that's cool. If you want to just tell us how you would like to be referenced as we proceed.
It's okay. You can use female victim. That's fine.
Female victim. We'll stick with that. Thank you again for sharing some of your time with us. As I said, real pleasure to have you on the program. Before we get into the details of what has transpired over the last 6 months, is there any background information you would like to share with any of the listeners? Anything you think it would be helpful for them to know about you as we proceed?
I would just like to say that I've been studying racism for quite some time now. Still pretty young, but started to read a lot about it and learn from our elders that have been teaching us for so long about it. So even going into this situation, I was informed about white supremacy, and so that just gives some kind of background as to where I was at mentally when this happened. But I just want to, before I get into the story of what happened, I just want to thank you all for listening and taking time out of your days just to listen to the 6 months of terrorism that my brother had to go through, who was the main victim in this case, as well as my whole family. So thank you, Gus, for having me on the program, and thank you all the listeners for listening. And I'll just jump right into the story. I apologize in advance if it's a little all over the place. I have a lot of notes that I've been taking throughout the whole incident over the past 6 months, notes that I took from the night of the incident to the court cases, the lawyers, the prosecutors, and also some of the feelings and sentiments that myself and my brother felt. So I'll just, Gus, is it okay if I just go ahead and start with the night of the incident?
Absolutely.
Okay. Okay, so there were 4 of us that were there during the racist attack. And it was myself, my brother, his girlfriend, and our friend who called in when it first happened. And it all started out as just going to have fun, going to a lounge to celebrate a friend's birthday. And we didn't think that it would end up this way. And but our dad actually warned us that he felt something bad was going to happen. He didn't know what it was, but he kept mentioning alcohol. And he was saying, if you guys are going to drink, then you need to get a cab. And so he warned us throughout probably from a couple of days before the incident until right up until that night. So we still decided to go out anyway. And we went to the lounge first. We danced. We had fun. We had a really great time before all of this happened. And so then after we left the lounge, we decided to go to a restaurant in the D.C. area and just get some breakfast. We were kind of hungry. And we've been to this restaurant many times. This was a place that we frequented often over the past 3 years, especially my brother. He was the one who started me going there. So the 4 of us went there. And when we went in, the first thing that we should have noticed was that the restaurant was full of white people. I think, if I can recall, there was only one black person in there, and it's a small restaurant, so it probably was only about 30 to 40 people in there, and everyone's kind of sitting right on top of each other because the booths are right next to each other. So we were seated next to a group of 4 white people, 2 white males and 2 white females. And the way that my brother was positioned, his back was up against the back of one of the white females, and the other white female that she was with was sitting next to her. So we ordered our food, and before it came out, it hadn't even come out yet. We were just kind of talking with each other, and our friend had been drinking a few drinks and was kind of sick, and so he kind of passed out while we were waiting for the food to come. And while we were waiting, this white female that was behind my brother, she had her hair in a ponytail, and it was long, and she swung her hair in his direction. And to this day, we can't figure out why. We have our suspicions about why, but she hit him with her hair. And I just remember looking at her like she was crazy. And but she continued to do it. She did it at least 1 or 2 more times. And then my brother was bothered by it, so he turned around and he asked her to stop flinging her hair on him. And what you would think a normal, rational person would do would be just to stop or apologize, but that's not what she did. She continued to do it, and she flung her hair at him about 3 to 4 more times. And one of the times that he asked her to stop, she actually laughed in our faces. And so this angered him. It angered me. I remember rising up out of my seat and telling her to stop being disrespectful. And my brother, he was also drinking, which could have led to him reacting the way that he did. And he just stood up in front of their table, in front of the 4 white people, and firmly said, "Stop putting your hair on me." And so at that point, the white males at the table, they didn't say anything to him. The white females didn't say anything. What happened was their waiter was another white male, came up, and him and my brother ended up being in each other's faces. And no one was hit or pushed or anything, but they were so close their noses could have touched. And he said, "You all have to leave." That's what the waiter told us. He didn't say, what's happening here? Is there a problem? He didn't tell the white people to leave. He just immediately just told us to leave. So at that point, I held my friend up, and the other male that was with us, and he was able to walk out. And my brother and his girlfriend began to walk out, and I was the last person leaving the restaurant. And I was really upset. And as I was walking out, I pointed at the white female who started the incident, who was flinging her hair, and I said, "This is all because of you." And I remember I called them racist bitches, and I told them that they were flinging their nasty hair on people. And I started to walk toward the door, and the white females didn't say anything to me until I got to the door. And one of the white females yelled something out at me. I can't remember what she said. And at that point, I was definitely ready to fight, and was getting ready to do so. But they didn't want to fight. So by this time, I'm by the door getting ready to walk out. And the one black female that was in the restaurant that I mentioned earlier, she was at a table with 2 white males. One of the white males at the table with the black female said to me, he yelled something out at me while I was having an exchange with the white females that were all the way across the restaurant. He didn't know them. They didn't know him. They had nothing to do with each other except that they were white. And I didn't respond to him. And at that time, I remember my brother coming back into the restaurant, and I didn't know if it was because he had heard the white male say something to me. At this time, I didn't know why he was coming back in, but later found out that he was going back in because he had lost his phone, or he'd left his phone, and so he was going back to look for it. And he said he just remembers all eyes being on him, all the white people looking at him, some of the white males in the restaurant just giving him evil stares like they were going to attack him. He said he had this feeling like he was going to be attacked at that moment before it had even happened. So I think that really angered him. So I was trying to get him out of the restaurant, but I couldn't. He was really angry, understandably so, and I would have been as well, but I couldn't get him out. So I just walked out of the restaurant because I was frustrated. So then I remember his girlfriend coming out maybe about, I couldn't have been gone out of the restaurant more than 30 seconds, and she came out and asked me to help and then told me that he was being attacked. So I immediately ran back into the restaurant, and before I ran in, I looked in the window, and I'll never forget what I saw when I looked in that window. And I just remember my brother on the ground being dragged, and it was 3 white males attacking him. And it's very important to note that neither of these 3 white males that were attacking him were the ones from the initial incident. They were not the white males that were at the table with the white females. These were white males that they didn't even know. So I ran back in, and I didn't know who was who. All I knew was that if the person was white, they were getting hit, because I knew that was the reason that they were attacking my brother, was because he was black and they were white. So I went back in, just started hitting whoever just to get them off of my brother. I remember the clothing that they were wearing and their hairstyles and some of their faces. And one of the main attackers, the one who actually was the one who, in the end, we found out threw the first punch at him, was one of the white males that was at the table with the black female. And he was the one who threw the first punch. And my brother was walking. He had his back turned. He was walking outside of the restaurant. He was getting ready to leave. It wasn't even like he had approached the fight or that they started fighting. And while he was looking, he was walking out, head turned. And they decided that they wanted to start this fight. So when I got in, I tried to get one of the white males off of him. I was hitting him, and I pushed him to the side. I was trying to hold him back. And then the other white male, while I was trying to get them off of my brother, looked at me and said, "You're next." And that, I remember at that moment, I wasn't scared throughout the whole fight, but at that moment, I remember feeling terror. And I remember feeling fear, because as a female, and there's 3 males attacking my brother, he doesn't have help, and if they do something, if they hurt him, then I felt like, who's going to stop them from hurting me? Who's going to help me? So I was just hoping that he could get up. So actually, when that one white male threatened me and said, "You're next," when the other white male attacking my brother heard that, he actually started kicking my brother harder and hitting him harder. So I really tried to get him off and was hitting him. And then my brother was able to get up. This all happened really quickly, probably within a minute, so it wasn't long and drawn out, but he was able to get up pretty fast and free himself from them. And we were making our way out of the restaurant, and I believe he grabbed a sugar shaker off the table, and I can't remember if he threw it from inside or outside, but we were just making our way out. And then all of a sudden, when we were walking down the steps, 2 squad cars pulled up of enforcement officers. And then that's like the second part of the incident. So when they pulled up, they immediately arrested my brother. Automatically, because he was black, he was the one who caused everything without them even knowing anything. So they put him in handcuffs, and, while he was standing outside. They didn't handcuff any of the white people that attacked him. Initially, they didn't handcuff any of them. My brother was standing outside handcuffed for at least 20 to 30 minutes before they handcuffed and arrested one of his attackers. Well, 2 of the other ones were just walking free. The white females that started it, they walked free and actually looked happy that this was the outcome. They were like skipping away, like it's just a joke. Oh, ha. It just didn't affect their life, and looks like they were able to cause some black people some harm, so they were happy about that. But just to talk about how the officers reacted, they didn't believe anything that we had to say. They were very accusatory. They wouldn't listen to us. Some of them taunted us and just said very unnecessary things. They went in to talk to the white people inside the restaurant, and then they came back out. After that, they came back out and asked us, well, what happened? And we said that me and my brother's girlfriend said that my brother had been attacked, and one of the white female officers said, well, that's not what I heard. I heard witness accounts otherwise. And then immediately I'm thinking, how could they say that he wasn't attacked when they just clearly saw him get attacked? So my brother's girlfriend tried to explain to her what happened, and she wouldn't listen to her. She just said, I smell alcohol in your breath, and cut her off, which made my brother's girlfriend very sad. One of the other white female officers was talking to my brother, and she was just saying really rude things to him. She said, I can't remember what she asked him, but I remember him saying to her, ask who threw the first punch. And I remember her responding to him, she said, it doesn't matter. And my brother responded to her, why doesn't it matter? And they were just really trying to make him feel like it was all his fault. And so they finally went in, and there was a videotape that the store had of the incident. So the officers went in and watched the videotape footage of what happened. And then they came back out. And it's like after they saw the video, the officers that were, accusing us and saying that we were drinking and that just not trying to listen to us, it seemed like their whole demeanor changed. And the white female officer came back out and said, you all were right. They hit your brother while he was walking out. And also there was a black female officer present who was saying the same thing. But she said something really silly. She said something to the effect of, well, they got you good, didn't they? Or something like that. And then a white male officer came out and said to me, stop trying to act innocent. I saw you get your licks in. And I said, of course, that's my brother. What else would you expect me to do? Or I'm not just going to sit there. I said something like that. And at that point, I remember earlier, I remember when they first handcuffed my brother, I asked the officer several times, why is my brother the only one handcuffed when the people that attacked him in there are not handcuffed? And I had to ask them this at least 3 times before they finally decided to take the handcuffs off of him. And then they did arrest one of the attackers, the one who threatened me and said I was next. They did arrest him. And after they watched the footage, they said my brother wasn't going to be charged with assault, but that he was going to be charged with the destruction of property from throwing the sugar shaker through the window of the restaurant after he was attacked. So that night my brother was taken to jail, and we were able to get a cab home. And before that, we also were able to write out some witness statements of what had happened. So we ended up staying up all night and then going to bail my brother out in the morning, like around 9 or 10 a.m. that morning. And so we found a bail bondsman, and he just seemed shocked that we were able to come up with the amount of money to get him out, because I'm assuming because we were black. He just seemed shocked because the bail was set pretty high for what had happened.
Do you remember the amount of the bail?
Yeah, it was $10,000. And so we waited around for hours and hours, but we were able to get him out. And when he came out, you could see the bruises on his part. One of the white males that attacked him basically stuck his nail inside his nose and like scratched a big chunk of skin out, to the point where you could see, if you stayed on the side of him, you could see a chunk missing from his nose. The bruises and his eye was red, and so we took pictures of it so that we would have it for court. And then the next part is just the charges that were given. My brother was charged with 3 felonies, and it turns out that the white male attacker that they arrested was charged with 1 misdemeanor assault, and the other 2 were never apprehended at all. And throughout the court situation, when we continued to ask if the officers had tried searching for these other 2 attackers, had they found them, had they been arrested, the answer was no. And I remember asking my brother's lawyer, and he had to get a lawyer pretty quickly before his hearing, which they set 4 days later, so he didn't know really where to turn to, but he made a calculated decision to get a white female lawyer. And when I asked her why hadn't these other 2 attackers been arrested, she said, well, it's just like how some people are pulled over and how some people are not. That was her response. And I said, well, that case is different. I said, in this case, they actually have video footage. And I was really upset, but she said that they had said they were not, the officer said they were not going to search for these other 2 people at all. With the charges, I remember my brother telling me that when he was arrested, when the magistrate was also white, he said that one of the female officers that arrested him was telling the magistrate what had happened. And my brother said she was lying. She was embellishing the story. She was saying he drew the sugar shaker through the glass and it shattered everywhere and it cut people and this and that, and it was just not true at all, which didn't help the situation. And then next I'm going to talk about court, the lawyer, the witnesses, and prosecutors. But before I go on, Gus, do you have anything you wanted to point out or any questions?
A few questions, and I guess just important lessons. I guess if we were doing chapters, we would be on about chapter 2, chapter 3, and I think there are about 6-7 chapters to this whole incident. So I guess the first thing I would point out, and I wrote this in the chat room, this is just 5-10 minute little altercation. If you had a stopwatch from the moment that the white woman threw her hair back the first time to the moment when your brother was arrested and placed in the police officer's vehicle, how much time do you think elapsed?
I would say probably about 15 minutes and no more than 20. Probably about 15 minutes.
Now, the title is White People Can Ruin Your Life in 10 Minutes. We got from 15 to 20 minutes, a white woman throwing her hair to a black person and ended up being in a police vehicle. That is how quickly, in the blink of an eye, white people can cause all sorts of damage, ruin your life. Blink of an eye. One thing I did want to ask, because I think this is super important, and again, I know a lot of young people listen to the program, or I hope we can get more young people listening to the program, and they want to have a good time, and I know that's what a lot of it's about. We're encouraging even a lot of old people. They want to have a good time. They want to go out and drink and have their parties and what have you. What role did alcohol play in perhaps you all not making the best decisions, not being able to respond in the best manner in this situation? Just, I'm talking about the black people you were with, you all drinking. How did that impact this situation?
Okay. I would say alcohol definitely played a role in how the situation panned out. I would say first, my brother, he wasn't completely drunk or out of his mind or anything like that. He had just had a few drinks, but I think his reaction would have been different had he not been drinking. I think alcohol just made him a little bit more angry than what he would have been. I think if he had not been drinking, he would have probably just left. I don't think he would have got up in front of their table and said anything. I don't think that him and the waiter would have been in each other's faces or anything like that if he hadn't been drinking. And then also, I had maybe 2 drinks that night. I wasn't drunk. I was probably tipsy at the lounge before we got to the restaurant, but I don't think it affected how I reacted. I would have reacted that way even if I wasn't drunk, because that's just how I am. And also, I remember everything pretty vividly. I remember a lot of details about what happened that night. So, but I think also if alcohol wasn't involved, the officers wouldn't have been able to use that. Oh, we don't believe you all because you've been drinking, or I can smell alcohol in your breath, or and then also my friend, he didn't know that this was going to happen. But if he had not been passed out, then I think that a lot of times white people look for a weakness, and I think once they saw that that my brother was the only male that was coherent, I think that led them to attack in a mob fashion, because they saw that he didn't have help. And I think maybe if he had another male's help, then they probably would have been less likely to do that. And then it would more numbers. If we'd had more numbers, it would have been better. White people also seem to want to attack when black people are more vulnerable and more isolated. So I think that alcohol definitely played a role in isolating us more.
Do you think your brother would have been arrested and placed in greater confinement if you all had been sober that night?
I'm not sure. There's a possibility he might not have, but I'm not sure.
If I guess knowing what you know now, if you all were going to go out drinking, what different choices would you make? Like, if you had the opportunity to go back and talk to yourself, what different choices would you have made with regards to going out and knowing you're going to be consuming alcohol?
If I could go back, I probably would not have went out that night at all. Or if I would have, I probably would have looked at when we went to the restaurant, I probably would have just not went in. I probably would have turned around knowing that to be in this situation in this restaurant with this many white people after we had been drinking just wasn't safe. So I either would have not went out at all, I would have not entered the restaurant, or maybe once it happened, I think the best thing for us to do would have been to just walk out and leave before anything escalated.
What do you think again, hindsight 2020, but what do you think would be the best way to respond? Like if there are people listening in who say, hey, I'm in a restaurant and I feel like, some racist is doing something to try to annoy or irritate us, what do you think would be the best way to respond to what was the initiator in this instance, the white woman tossing her hair? What do you think would be the best response to that?
I think Mr. Fuller gave like one of the best options to respond, which was just go to the manager of the store that you're in or another person that's in charge and just say, hey, there's another patron here who's making my time here uncomfortable. Can you go to the table and say something? Or just let them know and then let them handle it. And then that way that puts the heat on them and off of you. Just, don't say anything to them yourself, but just go to the person in charge and let them handle it. And in that way it creates, it takes away the conflict between you two and actually it could put them in conflict or just take the heat off of you.
Yeah, I'm a big fan if you're out someplace and getting the most powerful white person to go and solve the problem. If someone is doing something incorrect, particularly if it's another white person doing something incorrect, getting the most powerful white person in that immediate environment to go and handle the problem. I definitely agree with Mr. Fuller's suggestion about getting that white person to get another booth and or even immediately thinking, hey, maybe this is not the place that we should be. Maybe we should, find a different spot to hang out or, whatever we're happen to do. And if we're getting a meal, maybe we should find a different place to be at because it's just, again, white people can cause a lot of damage in short order. I think the estimate was 15 to 20 minutes. White people can cause a lot of damage in short order. Also, wanted to ask, just for emphasis, we talk about the Voltron Effect. White people, it's not going to be one white person. They are going to synchronize their efforts. It is going to be a group. It is going to be white people in concert terrorizing black and non-white people. You said these white people who participated in assaulting your brother, they were strangers? They did not know each other? Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. The white people that assaulted him did not know the white people that initially started the incident, but I guess they wanted to take up for these white people because they were white and they didn't like black people standing up for themselves. And but one of them was on this side of the restaurant, the other one was on the other side of the restaurant. I didn't know who these people were. I don't know if they knew each other, but I know for sure the one on the other end of the restaurant didn't know the ones on this end of the restaurant, and they just all teamed up and attacked my brother as he was walking out, and he did not hit them first. So, and that's a major point that they decided that they were going to get into this mob attack and harm him. And the worst part about it is that, he could have died. I mean, when someone is jumped, you never know what the outcome could be.
Behind enemy lines, cousins. I remember when I first heard some of the details about this, that stuck out to me immediately. And I've said this before, that's one of the patterns that should stick out, where the evidence, the overwhelming evidence shows white people, they understand. They are not ignorant about racism. They are not ignorant about which side of the chessboard they are on and how they should be functioning in relation to black people and other white people. Just think about that for a moment, folks. You're out someplace, restaurant, club, bar, wherever, and something goes down. You're having a problem with one white person, and other random white people don't even know this white person that you're having an issue with. They see you, they see that you're not white, and they decide they are going to get involved, and they are going to be in opposition to you too. Just think about that for a moment, and hopefully keep that in mind as you're out doing whatever you do on the plantation, if you're on the job, or if you're on your quote-unquote free time. Keep that in mind. one of the last points I'm asking about, I guess, the first chapter or two here in this episode of terrorism. I think it was a comment, if you recall, when the enforcement officers, when they arrived and you all were attempting to give some of the details about what happened to you and these white people attacking you. Did one of the officers make a statement, something to the nature of, don't make this about race?
Yes, that was there was one black male officer that was present, and when he was asking us what happened, we told him, and he did say, I'm trying to remember, I'm sorry, let me just try to think back on which officer said what. I can't remember if it was, no, it wasn't the black male officer. He said something like, oh, this is small, like basically saying this is insignificant. But I think it was the white female who said not to make it about race. I can't remember exactly how that happened.
Yeah, if you don't recall, it's no worries. But I thought that did happen. I thought that was also significant. And I would say that is also a pattern I've seen where you have something that happens, it looks like it's white supremacy, racism, and then other white people and or confused victims will come in and hey, don't play the race card, don't do that. Yeah, pretty consistent effort. But yeah, if you don't recall, it's no big deal. We have lots of details, constructive info to share. Let's see. I'll give out the number, and after you finish kind of giving us the narrative of how all of this played out, folks want to dial in and ask some questions about what happened. They can feel free to dial in. The number is 760-569-7676, and the code is 564943 pound. Press star 6 if you're on that line and you have a question. If you're on Skype, just open your dial pad up and press star 6 on Skype, and same thing, it'll put your hand up and we can get your question in. If you're on the TalkShoe line, it's star 8 if you have a question. Okay, I think that is kind of the first couple chapters in this incident. I think where you kind of left off with the narrative, you were telling us about attempting to get legal counsel for your brother. I think you all had bailed him out $10,000. That was another thing I had. I wrote it in the chat room. Keep track of the financial toll that this is taking. I was giving out the number. I'll give it out again. 760-569-7676. And the code is 564943 pound. Before we continue moving forward in the narrative, one other thing that I wanted listeners to keep in mind, the financial toll that this incident is taking. The bail was set at $10,000. So that's one expense already. Just keeping track of fees as we go when you have some sort of altercation with a white person. $10,000, that's where we are so far. Just keep that in mind. And I think I did ask rhetorically in the chat room if anybody out there, non-white people, if you've got a few $1,000s sitting around that you can, just afford to blow on having some sort of altercation with a random white person. Just rhetorically, for folks to keep that in mind, why we should have our antenna up and be as codified as possible. Let's see. Continuing with the narrative, you were at the part, I think you all had bailed your brother out and you were at the legal counsel, or I guess before we even get to that, you bail your brother out. Can you kind of talk about once he is bailed out and you all just dealing with the initial impact, like telling other friends, family members, trying to explain what happened and just how all of that transpired?
Okay. Well, once he was out, we did have a few family members who understood our position and who immediately felt that the white people who had attacked him were in the wrong, that there's nothing really that he could have done to stop it, being that he was walking out, leaving the situation and was attacked. And then there were family and friends who were blaming him, blaming the victim and saying it was his fault and he should have done this and he should have done that. And I do agree that there's things we all could have done better in that situation. But in this case, it's clear that the white people who had attacked him were in the wrong. And so that's what happened with just telling friends and family. And then after this, my brother had to just kind of figure out how he was going to navigate this with 3 felony charges. That's really serious. A felony could mean that you can't get an apartment. It could mean that you lose your job. It could mean that you can't vote. It's just a stigma that's placed on black males all too often, and it's not given. This felony title or brand is not given to white men at the same rate. It's I was reading Michelle Alexander's book, The New Jim Crow, where she was showing data that white men are much more likely to get misdemeanors, while black males are more likely to get felonies. So you can imagine that my brother was going through a lot of mental anguish and emotional turmoil trying to figure out what he was going to do, and having to get the lawyer and all the money that he had to pay out and could possibly lose as a result of the situation. So next there was just a series of a lot of court dates that we had to go to. We had to miss a lot of work time, be emotionally drained for probably for the next 5 months. It was probably like one case per month, or sometimes 2 in 1 month. And so when we went to the court date, the initial one, it was like a racist assault all over again. We basically were up against white prosecutors, white witnesses, and at the beginning there was a white judge, but that changed toward the end. White lawyers, so we were just outnumbered. And what happened was the prosecutors had called like maybe five white witnesses that night from the restaurant, and they had all teamed up like an army and were just lying about what happened, lying about what was said, lying about what was done. And we just didn't know if his lawyer was believing them. And the prosecutors were not, they didn't want to let him, they wanted to charge him with everything, but they did decide to drop 2 of the charges up front, but they wanted to keep one of the charges. And actually wrote down a quote that one of the prosecutors said, and he said, "I can drop the felony down to a misdemeanor, but I'm not going to." So it was fully within his power to do that, but he didn't want to at all. Let's see if I can, I'm just going to look through my notes and see if I can find anything else from that day. One of the things was that the witnesses, basically, my brother's lawyer came to us and said that the witnesses wanted to see my brother do some years in jail. The lawyer said, yeah, they want you to do some years, and the lawyer told the witnesses that he's not a criminal, and they just seemed shocked, and I was telling all sorts of lies, and just trying to get him put away for a long time. And with felonies, you can get put away. I mean, he could have faced up to 20 years in prison. Let me see if I can find anything else in the notes that I wanted to mention. My brother said that he felt that they were annoyed every time the subject was brought up that he had been attacked and was the victim in all of this. That was one part they definitely didn't want to hear. He also said that my brother said it was incredible how he made it through this whole process without even one person listening to his story. And I also noticed how throughout this whole process that there were, at the beginning at least, there were no black people to help him at the beginning. I wrote that the initial starters of the conflict were white, the attackers were white, the witnesses were white, the lawyers were white, the prosecutor was white, the enforcement officials were white, and the magistrate was white. Everyone in the restaurant white. And I wrote, how can a black man survive when all these white people are collaborating together to put a noose around his neck? How can his story be heard? How will the truth be told? How could justice be served? And this was the way I was feeling. I wrote that they coalesced to snatch the crown from the king and put it on their own heads, something that their actions of hate, white supremacy, and malice showed they were not worthy of. And just to talk some more about what was going on in court, at these many court cases, at one point, my brother's lawyer had to be gone, and there was another lawyer put in place for one court date. And the lack of professionalism that was showed was immense. When the new lawyer came, the stand-in lawyer came, this person didn't know that the other lawyer had even previously represented him. I remember when I was walking into the courtroom that day, this particular lawyer patted me on my back and said, "Enjoy the show." And then when we were leaving the courtroom, that particular lawyer told my brother, "Good luck." And I felt that was a connotation that one is going at it alone. And so basically my brother didn't know whose side his lawyers were on, and so that was a constant worry throughout the process. And I just noticed how a lot of the lawyers in the courtroom were just laughing and joking, and everything was just a joke, and this was just business as usual for them, while black lives were being ruined. And then another court date was the court date where one of the white male attackers of my brother, the one that was arrested, he was supposed to be prosecuted during this court date. So they called my brother in as a witness. And during this time, the focus was not on the attacker at all. The focus was still put on my brother. And they reviewed the tapes, and they asked my brother, what happened? Why were you so angry? That's what they were asking. Why were you so angry? They didn't treat him as if he was the victim of this attack at all. They were trying to just get information from him, trying to get him to say something and slip up or say something that would harm him. The focus was just constantly on him the whole time. Even though they had seen the tape, they kept showing the parts of the tape where my brother was upset instead of the parts of the tape where he was being attacked. And I also saw the attacker there at that court date, and he was I remember him looking down and just looking pitiful, like, woe is me. when in reality he was being charged with one misdemeanor while my brother was facing all these felonies, which could have changed his life forever. So one important thing was that the lawyer on the other side of the case, the attacker's lawyer, came up to my brother and tried to work out some kind of deal, and my brother didn't go for it. He asked him, what am I going to gain by speaking to you? No, I don't want to speak with you. And the lawyer just looked shocked, like he didn't expect him to respond that way. And we left after that. And then the final court date was when my brother went back to be sentenced. And before that court date, he had to put together a pre-sentencing investigation package and just explain his story of what happened. We put the pictures of what happened and some other things in there. And he said that it was there were two black people that were very important in helping him with this case. And one of them was the first probation officer, who was a black female, and she helped in his pre-sentencing investigation. She helped him rearrange some things that would help him and took out some things that could possibly harm him. And then at the end of the case, there was a black judge, which was great. And it turned out that at that court case, he was able to get all of the felony charges dropped and just be on probation. So a lot of our worry went away once this happened. That was just definitely a victory for us because we felt like it was impossible at the beginning. Everything was stacked against him, and no one was on our side. And then at the end, he was able to get the charges dropped. And let me just look over my notes quickly and see if there's anything else I missed from the court cases. I think that was everything. And then the last note I wanted to make was that probably about 2 weeks after the last court case where the charges were dropped against my brother, he got a mysterious prank call from a couple of white people who were asking for him, and they said, "This is your probation officer," among some other things. And then they asked him, my brother, "Oh, you haven't hung up yet?" And then my brother hung up. So we believe it was possibly the attackers or some of their friends or family, and we don't know how they got his number. But that basically concludes what happened. And so that's if you have any questions or comments or anything.
Wow. I guess going back with your attorney, your brother's attorney, white female, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. If you could kind of share some of the details in terms of your observations, your thoughts around her. I think she even had some interesting commentary about who you reminded her of.
Yes. I really wasn't too sure about his lawyer from the beginning or what her motives were. Just remember the first time of us meeting with her saying that, like, one of the first things she said to me when we walked in, "Now, this is a serious situation. My brother's life is at stake. He's having to pay out a lot of money, could possibly lose his job." And the first thing she said to me is, "You look like Janet Jackson." And this continued probably the next 2 or 3 times. Every time we meet with her, she'd say the same thing, "Oh, you look like Janet Jackson," which I thought was really silly considering the circumstances and just trivializing the situation. And then she said, the last time she said it, she said, "You look like you're shy or embarrassed." when I say you look like Janet Jackson, so I'm going to stop. And she said, I wish I looked like Janet Jackson. And I just thought it was really silly. So that was just kind of like her demeanor in the situation.
Do you feel like she, just your observations, do you feel like she was giving the best legal aid to your brother to help him, get through these serious charges, felonies?
No, I don't feel like she was giving the best aid. I feel like she didn't do half of what she could have done. She didn't get appraisals or of the damages. She didn't really suggest anything that we could do or that my brother could do to get out of the situation. She didn't meet with him. Everything was basically through email. So I feel like her counsel was very subpar and mediocre. I feel like maybe she was just in it for the money and not to help.
Again, just keeping track of the emotional strain, stress on the job, just all aspects, and the financial strain. The bail was $10,000. Do you have like an estimate around the attorney's fees that this racist suspect white woman that your brother had to forfeit to her?
I think it was probably the legal counsel was near $10,000, and then paying for the damages as well. So it was a lot of money that had to be paid out. So even though the charges were dropped, there were financial consequences that they did win in this case. Financial gains for whom? The restaurant or the white attackers? Just for, I would say, the white system in general. I feel as if sometimes if they can't get non-white people in an actual jail cell, they can at least hit your pockets. If they can get money out of you, then that's a success for them. Do you all incur any court fees? Yes. He will have to pay court costs as well. Wow. And your brother, he was even trying to, being responsible, saying, hey, I'm going to pay for the damages, throwing the, sugar shaker or what have you, in all this incident that broke the window. I'll pay for the damages, so that will, look, I'm not trying to shirk any duty. Even though I was assaulted and terrorized here, I'll pay for the window. Your brother went and paid for the window out of pocket. Is that correct? Yes. Okay. Wow. I hope folks are keeping a kind of running tab here. Just 15 minutes. 15 minutes of things going awry with a group of terrorist thugs at a restaurant. Thousands, looking like tens of thousands of dollars later. Court fees, court visits, having to miss time from work. That would be calculated as well, I would think, having to miss time from work for court appearances, and getting all this resolved, taking time and energy, not to mention the strain of having to deal with all this. Just keep all that in mind the next time that you feel like, you might lose your temper with a racist when they're out doing something. And you got to expect that. As I've said before, dogs bark, birds chirp, white people practice racism. Keep that in mind when you think you might be losing your temper. I'll give out the number, see if folks have any questions they want to ask. 760-569-7676. And the code is 564-943#.
I guess another aspect that I think is important as well. Did you feel like at any point throughout the whole 6-month ordeal that your brother was being blamed by any non-white people? That they were saying, this is his fault. He shouldn't have done this, or he should have done this. Did you feel like there was any blaming of the victim going on?
Not that much. I think here and there were instances where people would blame him and say, if he had not done this, then this wouldn't have happened, or just, I guess, didn't understand the severity of what the attackers had done in trying to place the blame on my brother, and just saying, had he not reacted the way he did, none of this would have happened. And so, yeah, I do think there was some blaming the victim involved.
If you have an idea, just if your brother had not been able to make the $10,000 bail, do you have any idea of how long he would have had to remain in greater confinement if that had not happened?
It probably would have been until his court date. It probably would have been a few months, I think. And I also feel like if he didn't have the finances to rectify all of this, I feel like he would have been just another black male caught up in the injustice system, because a lot of black people don't have that kind of money just sitting, and there's a possibility that if he didn't have the money for a lawyer, he probably would have been charged with those 3 felonies if he'd had like a court-appointed lawyer, or it could have been a lot worse. And I think that's what the enforcement officer that wrote out the charges possibly do that, and tried to stack charges against him so it'd be harder to get out of him.
I'm sure this sort of thing happens. I think when we talk to you, we're saying that consistently. This sort of thing happens all the time. You just don't hear about it. You just don't get the details. It's not going to be the lead story on the evening news. It's not going to be on the front page of the local paper. CNN is not going to be doing any major headlines on these sort of incidents. But I know this sort of thing happens all the time. It could easily be any of the non-white people who are listening to this program. It could easily end up being you. Wow. Did at any point, because there was actual video, if at any point during your brother's court proceedings, did they actually show the video? And I mean the court proceedings where they were dealing with his charges.
They didn't show it in the courtroom, and they didn't show it to us. I still haven't seen the video, but they showed it when my brother had to go to be a witness against his attack. They showed clips of it, but not the whole thing.
How did the court proceedings? How were the court proceedings against your brother's attacker? How was that resolved? Is that ongoing, or has that been concluded?
I'm not sure if it's ongoing. We haven't checked to see yet, but I'm not sure what the outcome of that was.
Wow. Misdemeanor. Keep that in mind for folks listening in. Only a misdemeanor. The one of the white people, and there were several white people who were violently attacking this black male and threatening a black female. Only one white person ended up being charged, and with a misdemeanor, not a felony. Wow. I think, just in my view, this incident, it reveals so much about how white people organize to practice racism, white supremacy. Again, as I said before, it's not going to be a single white person. If you're in conflict, it's going to be a group of white people coordinating their response, synchronizing what they say, what they do, sharing information, probably a lot of private conversations that you're not going to be privy to. I guess what sort of things, being someone who had an understanding of racism, white supremacy before all of this happened, what have you learned from this situation?
The main thing that I learned was what Mr. Fuller said, which was never, ever get into an altercation with a white person, ever, under any circumstances, ever. And I think that's the main thing that I learned, is just that in the future, if a conflict comes up with a white person, whether it be a coworker, someone out on the street, the best thing to do is just to walk away and surrender, because it's the chances of winning against something that could happen out of it is highly unlikely that you'll win. And they're going to have, like you said, it's going to not just be one, there's going to be many white people deciding what happens as a result of that conflict. And that people that weren't even there and don't know your side of the story and won't listen to your side of the story. So I think that's the major thing I learned, is just to walk away rather than say anything or do anything.
What would your response be to a black person if they said, "Oh, you're punking out, and that's what we've been doing too much of, and you need to stand up for yourself. You can't just let white people walk all over you and do anything to you"? What would your response be?
I would say that walking away in a situation where there's going to be conflict with a white person is standing up for yourself, because the consequences are going to be greater if you say or do something than they would be if you walk away. So, I mean, if they call that getting into conflict with a white person, if they call that standing up for yourself, in the end, the white people are still going to win, because, like I said, there's financial consequences. You could end up in jail. So that's a big win for them.
We had a person who dialed in. If it's all right to take a question or two, are you cool with taking questions?
Yeah.
Okay. 5369, your line should be open. 5369.
Hey, good evening, guys. Thank you to the caller for calling in today. And I just wanted to express my sincere, condolence that this had to happen to your family. And I'm glad that things were resolved and your brother wasn't jailed and, unrightfully prisoned. But I just have one question from you. Oh, sorry.
Okay. It's okay.
I just had a question for you. I'm just wondering, why didn't they? I didn't hear the whole story about why, the altercation, how that happened. But why didn't they treat this incident as a hate crime? Did your family try to pursue anything with the Action Network or,
No, we didn't try to pursue anything with them. I guess just trying to keep it, not wanting anything to blow up from it, and then having to suffer other issues from that. But I think it definitely should have been treated as a hate crime. But from what I've seen, anything that they usually call a hate crime is usually involving, if it's like a white person is the aggressor against a black person, it's usually in a case where they use the word nigger. I don't know what the qualifications are for it to be deemed a hate crime, but I knew that they definitely weren't going to do that in this case, even though it was all white people attacking one black person and a smaller group of black people. Even the white people in the restaurant were complicit with it. They were not breaking up the fight. They weren't helping. So basically it was all against a few. And even though that took place, they didn't deem it a hate crime. They didn't even arrest the attackers, let alone try to see it for what it really was. So I'm not sure why they didn't deem it a hate crime, but I suspect it's because they don't care.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah. I'm not sure if the caller, if he heard the enforcement officers when they arrived on the scene. Our guest, she said she didn't recall the exact details, but I think she recalls they said something to the effect of "Don't make this a racial incident" when they initially arrived on the scene. So it seems like even a coordinated effort from the very beginning to work away from categorizing this, recognizing this as what it is, an incident of white terrorism, racism, white supremacy. They did not want to get anywhere close to labeling it as such. Yeah,
and it just angers me that our women have to be so afraid, of these white terrorists, and they have to be fear of calling them out and exposing them for what they are. And, I'm glad that we have radio programs where we can express our sentiments with one another and, heal and try to move forward with one another, but we still have to call the devil out. And, like they used to say back in the day when we were younger, tell the truth and shame the devil. And if we don't call Satan out for who he is and for what he does, then I don't think he'll ever, be revealed to the people.
I concur. The caller, did you have any other questions or?
No, thank you very much, Gus. And again, I extend my deepest condolences, and I apologize that this had to happen to the family. And I wish that we had more of an action network in our community to prevent things like this from happening, and to be there for the follow-up care as well.
Thank you.
Post-traumatic stress. No problem. And, I'll keep your family in my prayers and tell your brother to stay strong.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. I also want to remind folks, our guest, she is the black female I was referencing back when I first heard about this incident at the beginning of the year, back in January. And I kept saying repeatedly, I am totally in love with black females. Her response, like seeing her brother being assaulted by this gang of racist thugs, and she hopped in to defend him like that. I'm still just incredibly impressed with that response, and just seeing a black person, even though I'm outnumbered and this is, a terrible situation, but I'm going to do the best that I can to respond and to defend another black person, my brother, family member. I'm going to do the best that I can to defend that person. That is phenomenal. Outstanding illustration of black warriorhood from a black female. I said it repeatedly at the beginning of the year when I first heard it. Just make sure I get that on the record as well. This is the person I was referencing at the time. Wow. And you said you think that would have been your response even today. That would have been your response if you were seeing your brother or one of your family friends being assaulted in that manner. That would be your response, no hesitation, to go to defend that person?
Absolutely.
That's what's up. Historically, the black female has always been our number one supporter, and we have understood that, we're in this experiment together, we're in this war together. Since they took us from the slave ships, we've understood that the black man and the African woman, had to unite, regardless of the woman was raped by the slave master, and she still went home and looked at her husband in the face like a man, regardless if he was whipped and beaten and broken down. She still went home and cooked dinner for her husband and served him and her children. And I just think that the spirit of the black woman is a phenomenal. And, I'm amazed by them all the time too, Gus.
For sure. Outstanding illustration of black warriorhood. I will say it again. Highly commendable. double check, see if anybody has any other questions. They will have any other details about the incident. Number to dial is 760-569-7676, and the code is 564-943#. Press star 6 if you have questions, if you're on that line, and the folks that are on the talk shoe line, star 8 if you have any questions. Also think, very important, like I said, for young people, because that's, I think, and I can't even really say just young people, because I know there are a lot of people that are over 40 who go out and do the partying and what have you. But for younger folks, the folks that are in their late teens, 20s, I guess what would you tell them to try to emphasize the importance of being cautious, as Mr. Fuller said, having your antenna up with regards to being around white people, particularly when you're out late, alcohol could be involved? What would you tell them?
I would tell them to be cautious about their surroundings and who they're surrounded by. I would tell them that if they know they're going to go into an establishment where it's a majority of white people, I would tell them to either not go, or if they're going to go, at least have a large group of people where, like I said, they won't feel isolated or be isolated, and so they won't be easily attacked or become easy prey. Also, don't be drunk around white people. I would tell them that if you're going to be around white people, don't drink at all, but if you're going to, maybe one drink at the most. You just have to be on your game at all times around them. You just never know what's going to happen. It's not safe to be outnumbered in that way. There's a possibility that they'll gang up as a mob against you. I just think overall, going out to, just partying in clubs, it's unsafe in general, even if victims are around other victims, since we're, taught to hate each other. There's a possibility you could leave there hurt up or not come home. So just knowing that we're under this system where we can be attacked by white people, or where victims hate other victims, just be very cautious going out, drink as little as possible, or drink at home. I'm trying to get better with that myself, but I would just tell them to just watch the establishments that they go into and just try to remain in large groups and less alcohol.
Less alcohol. I would big time advocate of sobriety. Alcohol has been has not aided victims of racism. I do not think alcohol has solved any of our problems. Maybe I'm being approved, but the person that called in 8662, do you have a question for our guest? 8662.
Yeah, hi. I was listening to that, and I'm really sorry that happened to your brother. And when I heard about the felonies, and I said, wow, such a small incident. It wasn't even his fault. But another question I had was about the person the two whites that were sitting on the other side of the room with the black female. And you said once the police came, she said something really kind of like she was in support of the whites that had attacked your brother. And I was saying, I'm not saying they were romantically involved with her, but possibly that could have been. But I was saying, like, oh my God, that's like she's helped. That's an example of a female, black female, helping to support white supremacy. So I just thought that was really terrible. And also, how do you feel about going out after all this? Going out to white restaurants, do you feel uncomfortable, and does it make you have flashbacks or anything like that?
First, I definitely agree with you with the way you felt about the black female aiding the white males to attack another black male. We felt the same way, and we're not sure if they were romantically involved. suspect that they were. But yeah, she definitely aided them, helped to make sure that we didn't get the identity of the white males. She did come, yes, and she did come up to us after the incident, but we didn't speak to her. But yeah, that was one of the saddest parts of the incident, that she was with them. And now, I definitely, shortly after that, when I went to a restaurant, I didn't feel comfortable at all. I was looking around. I was making sure, like, you know, how many of them are in here, you know, just kind of trying to check out their body language and demeanor and see if there was a possibility it could happen again. So things have definitely changed for me with restaurants. Since then, I do get some flashbacks. Throughout the ordeal, I had quite a few nightmares about seeing my brother attacked. So, I mean, it's not just physical ramifications, but also spiritual. I think that's very spiritual to have something locked into your spirit like that, where you can have nightmares about it. I don't feel as comfortable. I always look around. I never did that before. I always watch my surroundings as far as who's in the restaurant, and it definitely has affected me since then.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad all the charges were dropped and everything, and you know, I know you and your brother have been through a real traumatic situation, and we all have, and I really just pray for you, and you know, ask that you be protected and be aware, like Neely Fuller says, keep our antenna up, you know. And I really appreciate you sharing the story with us.
Thank you. Thank you all for listening.
I see Pam is on the line as well. Thank you, callers. Pam is on the line as well. Pam, if you had a question for our female guest, your line should be open as well.
Hi, good evening. My heart goes out to you and your family also. The question that I had was the question that the previous caller asked. I wasn't clear on what the reaction of the black female with the two white males were. And you said that she basically backed up the story?
Yes. We tried to find out who the attackers were so that they could be prosecuted. She didn't want to give us any information on who they were, and she left with them, and so she definitely was on their side.
Yeah. Still, you hope that somewhere in her mind, because that to me is so typical of the brain trashing that goes on when black people engage in sexual intercourse or socialize with white people. But I wonder, I hope that maybe something in her mind kind of clicks in and says, well, maybe this is not, maybe these aren't the kind of people I need to be around. But I'm sorry what happened, but I appreciate you sharing your story. And I'm going to try to share this program with other people, because things happen for a reason, and your story may save somebody's life. And I am sorry what your brother went through, but his experience will probably help a lot of people, because right now it's pretty much, I'm sold on it. Don't go places with white people and do a lot of drinking. So it's kind of reinforced that message in my mind. So, thank you for sharing, and, my heart goes out to you and your family, and, and I hope that you will, get past this incident. But thank you for sharing now.
Thank you.
I thought that was really important. I hope that wasn't minimized. You're talking about the after effects and having nightmares, post-traumatic stress syndrome, white supremacy stress reaction. I think that's a more accurate term. That's the term I prefer to use, white supremacy stress reactions. Have you all kind of talked about, or any of the victims that were out, have you all kind of talked about that? Do you know if he's had nightmares or any of the, I guess, emotional and or spiritual trauma as a result of what he's been going through?
I mentioned to him about me having the dream. I don't think that he's had any, but I know he went through a lot of emotional stress during this time. Just not knowing what the outcome could be, just the fact that there's a possibility he could be going to jail or going to prison, that was just like a major thing for him. Just having his whole life ruined, just having this years of prison or a felony hanging over his head, and just the uncertainty. So that kind of like that emotional roller coaster of, going through months and months and months of not knowing what the outcome was going to be he was telling me it was very emotionally stressful for him and for his girlfriend as well. So he went through a lot of emotional turmoil.
What are some of the things that you tried to do to heal, replenish from all that strain and trauma that you were dealing with?
One of the best things for me to do to try and heal was just to continue to be a support system for my brother throughout that time, just checking on him, making sure he was okay, seeing if he needed anything, helping in any way that I could. That was the best way for me to feel better. Letting him know that he wasn't alone, that I was in this with him, continuing to go into all the court cases with him. And I think also staying out of those environments, that helped me heal a lot. I think just taking good care of myself and reflecting on everything and just trying to, I really couldn't let go of what happened as much until about a month ago when we found out all the charges were going to be dropped. I think then we could really start the healing process, all of us, and just say, okay, let's try to put this behind us. And I think just doing the normal things that I regularly do to de-stress helped out. Just going for long walks, that really helped me clear my mind a lot. Just, lighting some candles and incense, meditating, that helped out a lot. And just trying to put things into perspective. I think that's another major thing, not listening to the people who are blaming the victim, seeing the situation for what it was, and just knowing that even if the outcome was bad, that my brother did stand up for himself, and that there was no crime done in standing up for himself. The crime was done when they attacked him. So putting that into perspective helped as well. So we've just all kind of been supporting each other throughout the whole ordeal. I think that was the best way for us to heal from it.
Excellent. Wow. I think being active as well, because it seemed like you just touched on it, going to support and being at the court appearances and taking notes. I suspect that aided too, giving you some agency. That's the term white people like to use, giving you some agency in dealing with all this. I would emphasize that too. Any non-white people, if you are going to court, I would even encourage folks to just go visit court proceedings and take notes. Little field notes, you can post them. If you have a blog, website, you can send them to me. I'll read them on the program. Just take notes, because you'll probably learn a lot about racism, white supremacy. Were there other court cases going on when you were going to these court proceedings?
Yes, there were a lot of cases going on every time we went to court, and I took a lot of notes on those as well. on what the sentences were, what the charges were, whether or not they were dropped, whether or not the person in question was white or non-white, and that did have a lot of bearing on the decision making. And I was just taking notes of the disparities between white people's cases and black people's cases, and wrote all that down. And that was definitely a learning experience for me.
What if you have any of those notes? What were some of the things that you recorded from some of the other court cases that you were observing during all this?
Okay, let me see if I can find some. One of the major things I observed was that there were a lot of white people there for cocaine charges, and that they weren't really given any penalty. One of them that was charged was just had his case completely dismissed after 2 years of probation, just dismissed. And so their drug charges, I saw how their drug charges are overlooked. Ours are given, hold a lot of weight and a lot of years in prison. Let me see if I can find anything else. Another thing I noticed was that I haven't checked the data on this recently, but been hearing from what other people have read and noticed that the black females are being locked up at an alarming rate, almost, if not more than black males now. And I noticed that at one court hearing there were about 7 black females that had to face the judge, and probably maybe about 5 black males. So I was wondering if that had any correlation with that. Let's see. I remember that same white male that had the charges dropped for his cocaine charge. The prosecutor actually stood up in favor for him instead of prosecuting like she was supposed to be doing. Okay, and I took some notes on some of the things I saw. I wrote, white lawyers were all laughing and were very buddy-buddy. I wrote, no black people were laughing, whether they were lawyers or defendants. It's not a laughing matter to us. I wrote, when black males went up, many their body languages showed shame and defeat. Slowful moving, head down, tapping fingers, nervous and confused expressions, tightening of facial muscles. I remember one black female went up and I'm not sure if she had went to a mental institution before, but she seemed like she was somewhat mentally stable, and she told the judge that she didn't want this white female public defendant. She just said, I don't want this person defending me. I already told the court this. Why is this person still defending me? And the public defendant just tried to make it seem as if the black female that was incarcerated was crazy. No one was really listening to her, and she sounded pretty coherent to me. I guess I sensed the overall carelessness of a lot of the public defenders and lawyers. Let's see. One of the white male lawyers in a dark gray suit and glasses approached the stand for his client that was not there, and he said he's locked up somewhere in a very sinister and joking way. He kept laughing that time, and another time when he went up, and then I wrote the message of the court session is that white people are at a show where they're laughing and having fun. Black people are at the mercy of the white people's show, and their lives are being damaged forever. I also witnessed another black female who wasn't able to get counsel at all. She applied to have counsel but was denied, so she had to defend herself, and it was pretty sad. A lot of the cases I saw were just really sad and just gave me a glimpse into what they do every day in their injustice system to us. And I didn't like what I saw at all. And it happens every day. And we just don't hear about it. So it just gave me just a glimpse into that.
That reminded me of Yorugu, since we've been doing the study sessions. I hope people are keeping up with their reading. This Friday, study session 3:50 to 4:20. But it reminded me of that and Mr. Fuller, when both of them, when they say that white people, they get enjoyment out of playing God and deciding whether this black person lives or dies, deciding whether this black person, you're going to do 20 years, you're going to do 50 years, or as the attorney, the prosecuting attorney told you and your brother, I have the power to drop these charges, but I'm not going to do that. I think they really enjoy that. I think that's why I would encourage people, go to observe some of the court proceedings. I think you'll really get to see the personality and demeanor of racist man, racist woman, the glee, the joy that they have in literally having these black lives in their hands.
Hello?
Yes, ma'am, we can hear you.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, okay. I didn't mean to check the folks that dialed in. Did you all have any other questions, or are you all good?
No. Everything's okay. No more questions.
Okay.
No, I don't have any either. I just noticed the same thing when I went to court for jury. Well, I didn't get selected for jury duty, but I noticed that a lot of joking amongst the white lawyers, public defenders, and I noticed that the people who were waiting, some of the white people, well, one particular white female who was waiting to see if she would get chosen, she thought the whole thing was a joke, and I finally had to say something to her, and unfortunately she was selected. And I knew as soon as they picked her, I said, that young black male's in trouble. And then when I was leaving the building, I took the elevator down to the street level, and there were some people joking and laughing, who would, I guess they weren't selected either. And they were joking and laughing, and I turned to them and I said, this is serious. This is somebody's life on the line. And they just looked at me. But I remember leaving and I was angry. Because they do think this is funny.
Yeah, that reminds me of a similar incident in my college town at a restaurant. Some students were, after a party, all white town, they went to the only 24-hour diner in the town for breakfast. And there was a black guy and a white guy sitting with each other at an adjacent table. And supposedly one of the students made a remark, and they ended up getting into an altercation. And the students were labeled as, being violent monsters and criminals, and they called them all black males when they were actually Hispanic males. And a lot of people were calling for their immediate dismissal from the expulsion from the camp. But to our surprise, they actually defended them and helped.
certainly every reason for non-white people, if you have some information, if you're less confused about racism, white supremacy, the importance of not taking white people for granted, not minimizing the power that they have, they can do a lot of damage, and quickly. I think as the broadcast today illustrates, they can do a lot of damage, lifelong damage, and it can happen in the blink of an eye. Again, I would encourage folks, share the program, particularly if you know of younger people who want to be going out, they want to go party, they want to have a good time. And you don't have to fuss at them, you don't have to do the finger wagging, and you don't even have to get on the morality. Everybody likes to have fun, everybody likes to have a good time, but just, you want to be smart. You want to make sure that you have fun and you don't have any regrets. You don't want to have your fun and then have a lot of problems pop up as a result of you having fun. Just try to share the information, as I said on the broadcast yesterday with the young black male, Bo Morrison, who was also alcohol. He was out at some party and enforcement officers get called, and he runs into the neighbor's yard. I think he's on their porch. White person runs on their porch and gets shot and killed. Just don't want any sort of tragedy to happen over nothing. You just cannot be careless in the system of racism, white supremacy around white people. Just being more mindful about what it means to be a black person, and just acknowledging the fact that there are a lot of white people who are looking for an opportunity to terrorize some black people, especially once they get some alcohol in their system. You got a lot of white people who are just looking for the opportunity to get at a black person. Got to have that in mind. So again, try to share with, if they're young or non-white people, try to share with them this program, some of the incidents, obviously Trayvon Martin, but some of the other incidents as well. Ramarley Graham, as I said, Bo Morrison up in Wisconsin, the young black male, 13 years old, who just got shot and killed last week. Share that information so that people know a little bit more about the danger of the world that we're in, dominated by white supremacy, what it means to be a young black person. The person who dialed in, I think you're on a Skype line. Did you have a question for our guest, person on the Skype line?
Oh, yes, Gus?
Yes, sir.
Okay, yeah. No, it's just a general question. What would you say about if you're at work and people say, hey, let's all go to a party, or it's a company function. Well, not necessarily like a company, an official function, but it's like you're expected to be there or something like that. Should you go? Or because I've been in a situation like that many times, I haven't gone, and it hasn't really done good for me on the job. What would you say about that?
I can give my view, and then for our female guest, if she wants to give her perspective on the job, I would find out if it's required. I know some of these little functions and things, they are required. You gotta go. If you have to go, I would not drink a teaspoon of anything. I would be there. I would find out how long am I going to be required to be here. If I need to be here for at least an hour, 2 hours, fine. I'll be there for 2 hours. I will be drinking ice water for the entire time that I'm there. I might even bring my own water and drink, and I would already have in mind, bam, I got to go pick up the children from soccer practice. I already have that in mind. If it's going to be later, I've got another engagement that I'm already committed to. I definitely want to be here to support whatever line you need to say, and not being hurt about it. Wanted to be here to support, be a good team player, and participate, but I already had X, Y, and Z that I was committed to, so I have to cut out at X whatever time. If you're not required to be there, I'm not going. And I've been in those situations where they had little Christmas parties, and trying to think of some of the other. It's been my experience on a lot of jobs where white people will find any reason to get together for alcohol. Holiday, birthday, doesn't even have to be any of that. Just any reason to get together for alcohol. I just started letting people know I don't drink anymore. Because at first, I tried to get out of it and be soft, like, oh, I still drink, but I just don't want to drink right now. And that didn't cut it. I found that white people are very aggressive with trying to get you to participate in their debauchery. I cut that cold turkey. I stopped drinking, and I let people know that. I broadcast that. I don't drink anymore. I'm not interested in being at a bar, and I found that nips it in the bud. If it's anything that's not required, if it's just them going out to participate in some sort of voluntary foolishness, you can already X my name out of that. So that would be number one. If it's required, I would go, and I would already have in mind, this is how long I'm going to be there. I'm not going to drink, and I'm already going to have in mind what I'm going to say so that I can be excused without it causing a problem. If it's not required, I'm not going. There's nothing to discuss, and moving forward. And I would make it known just anyway, I don't drink. You can even embellish it. I'm trying to think, because I had to add something to mine as to why I didn't drink anymore. It can be anything. It can be religious. You can tell them that you had a history of alcoholism in your family. I mean, anything. Just as long as the end result is I do not drink at all anymore, so that they understand, or at least they believe, you are 100% sober, so that they have no expectation that you will be consuming alcohol with them for any reason. I would make that very clear, and then proceed. If that's clear, if that makes sense. Yeah, I don't know. Female caller, if you want to give your view on that, or any of the other folks.
I think that the way you put that was excellent. If it's not required, don't go, because then that's just less of a chance for you to be in a situation where something negative could come out of the situation. In my case, at work, when there are functions, I don't go. If it's not required, I don't go. Like if it's some kind of like Christmas party, I never go to those. If it's a social function, the ice cream gathering, I don't go. But sometimes they have functions during the work hours where they'll have like they'll have food in the kitchen. I'll go to that. But I usually just get my food and leave. I don't stay and talk. I've had instances where I would go to those little functions in the kitchen where white people have tried to put me on the spot. And so I don't go. Sometimes they'll have alcohol, even during work hours. They'll have alcohol in the kitchen. And I remember the first time I did drink during that. But since then, I realized that wasn't a wise choice, and I haven't done it since. And that was probably 9 months ago, and I haven't done it since then. I would definitely say try to go to those as sparingly as possible. If you don't have to go, don't go. And then also, I would like to see what you all think about situations where coworkers invite you out to lunch, or like I know some non-white coworkers invited me out to a dinner one time, and I said yes, and then they had invited other white people there, and I ended up going, and it was not productive at all. It was a bunch of things said at the table that I didn't agree with. That was just nonsense. A lot of racist things said at the table. And since then, I've decided that if I'm ever invited out again, I'm not going to go out. So that's my policy, too. I just try to stay away as much as possible, unless I have to go.
I've been in situations like that. So, there's like when I'm in these professional environments, and I'm only one of the few black folks that end up going to these parties, being absolutely the only one there many times. And, I hear them many times. They'll talk about like another black person, and how they'll talk about somebody, but it actually is directed towards you. Or like, for example, I'll just make up a name. They'll say, "Oh, Jane doesn't socialize with us. Jane is kind of mean. She just stays distant." And I can't stand that. They'll say something like that, but really is directed towards you. That way?
Yes. Yes, definitely. That's definitely one of the things that they do. I know, like when I was saying that they put me on the spot in the kitchen, one of the white females asked me if I was going to come sit next to them. She said, "Well, aren't you going to come over here and sit with us?" And I just said no. I said, "No, I'm going to sit over here." And I sat all the way on the other end of the table. It felt like it was just a racist tactic to put me on the spot. Maybe just to see how I felt I'm not sure, but just it's best just to try and keep yourself out of that if you can.
You know, it's been my experience that, at least my personal experience, that white people seem to be able to pick up on black people who are not into them, so to speak. You know, black people who are not, who just have a whole different aura. And it seems like they can tell the difference. You don't have to say a word. It's like they can just pick up that there's something, whatever that is that they're picking up. You're not one of the good ones. You're not one of the submissive ones, one of the ones that worship them, idolize them, or whatever it is they're thinking. I did have a suggestion to the young man that was asking about the company functions. Sometimes I found the same thing that Gus said. If you tell people you don't drink, they want you to drink. They'll be real aggressive about it. One way you might be able to do this is to, go to the bar, get a water, get some lime in it, make it look like a drink, and then bring it back to the table. If they ask you if you're drinking, you got a drink in front of you. He says, no, I'm going on the way to the bathroom. I'm going to go to the restroom. I'm going to go get a drink. And that way you've got it sitting in front of you. Yeah, maybe that seems like a weak way to do it, but it can, if you're willing to do it, it can work. Because nobody's going to probably pick up your drink and taste it. And if they do, then so what? I had water. You assumed it was alcohol. So I'm just saying that might be one way to do it. I would also have to say, if you're not with them, they could perceive you against them. So we might have to tailor our our desire to move up the ladder. We might have to tailor that and just decide what's more important. Me ingratiating myself in a situation that's going to, ultimately cause me psychological harm, or me allowing myself to be limited on the job. Sometimes our ambition can be a problem, and sometimes you do have to make a decision between what are you willing to do to move up, and also while you're at the job, you might be thinking of ways that you can get out of there and be self-employed or be an entrepreneur. So I think it's very difficult to move up the ladder and not give up a big part of yourself, because white people are going to demand it. The more they give you, the more they take.
Yeah. I've been in, like I was saying before, that what you were saying, like they know how to pick up on certain black people if you're into them or not. And I've been into situations like that, like once, like what I just named before. And my personal nature is I just stay to myself. I'm not really talkative or social around a lot of people, so I keep to myself most of the time on the job. And they'll always bring up, either it'll be a group of coworkers, they'll bring up a name of another black person. They'll say, for example, they'll say, Leroy, he's nice, and Leroy does this, and Leroy's a great guy. Why don't you be more like Leroy or something, And I've seen this happen several times. It's all towards aimed towards you, not. It's mostly aimed towards you. When they say things like that, it's really picking a fault of you, not really talking about the individual necessarily. Like if they don't like you, they'll pick a black person and say, well, this person is not nice. This person doesn't socialize. And if they see that you don't have the personal trait like being socialized, they'll pick on another person. They'll say, well, Leroy is good. Leroy is a great guy. Everybody likes Leroy. And I've been in situations like that several times.
I've even had it where they've mentioned something that maybe it wasn't a person anybody knew, but they bring up some topic, like they may bring up welfare or something crazy. So, it's like I say, when you're on these jobs, you kind of got to make it, well, I don't know if you make a conscious decision, but sooner or later, the more they give you, the more they demand of you. And generally speaking, from what I have seen, black people go up the ladder, they've had to deal with a lot of degradation. That just comes with the territory. They had to do a lot of betrayal of self. Even Colin Powell, I don't know if he ever wrote his memoirs or whether he was told he better not, but he talked about, everybody thought Colin Powell, the first black Secretary of State, and wow, what a high prestigious position. But Colin Powell said in his yet-to-be-released memoirs that he had experienced many private moments of humiliation among his peers. Condoleezza Rice, it was rumored that Rumsfeld, who was then the Secretary of Defense in the Bush administration. It was strongly rumored, and I heard it multiple times, that he used to make her cry all the time. And one time I saw a picture, and I'm going to try to find it if anybody's interested in seeing it, where she was sitting next to Rumsfeld, and she looked like she had been crying. I had a male friend. I mean, I could tell you so many stories of black people who have been high up. A few people I've known personally, and they exact a very big price for what you get. You can look at the entertainment industry with black people in entertainment. So all I'm saying is, if you're in these situations on these jobs, there may come a day where you may have to make a decision. Am I willing to go along with something that I know is degrading to me, or that put me in a situation I don't want to be in, or am I willing to back down off of this situation and perhaps even find another job or just not move up the ladder? At some point, you may have to make that decision and ask yourself what it's worth.
There was another caller, Shadow 11 on the TalkShoe line. Your line is open. I didn't know if you had a question for our guest or if you had a thought or suggestion on the whole partying workplace suggestion or comment.
I actually had both. I had one question. Did you say, this is for the guest, did you say that this incident happened in the D.C. area?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Yes, it happened in the D.C. area.
I'm kind of new to the D.C. area. Would you mind telling me which restaurant it happened at?
I wouldn't be able to say that
you don't want to mention it.
But if there's some way I can speak to you off the program, I can let you know.
Hello?
Were you able to hear me?
Hello? I wasn't able to hear you. Hello?
Oh, okay. I wouldn't be able to give the exact name of the restaurant, but if I can speak to you off of the program, I can let you know.
Oh, okay. Sure. And as far as what you all are saying about workplace, I've encountered that, and I've encountered that at all levels. I encountered that when I was waiting tables, working my way through college. When I got a professional job, I never understood. Especially when I was waiting tables, I was more confused why they were so insistent on me going out and having a good time with them. And I would do it once in a while, but they were just very insistent on it. It got to a point where I was dating a black female, and to get me to go, they would ask her first, and she would get me to go. And I always felt like it was dangerous. A lot of alcohol, and I remember one time I was a white female who was attracted to me, and she got drunk, and she just started saying real loudly, "You don't like me because I'm white." And I kind of felt that vibe, like that dangerous situation that happens. That can happen with white women when they're upset. That's all I had to say.
I'm sure a lot of people who are listening, they have experienced this on a personal level. I would just emphasize this. I was experiencing this when I was super confused about racism. I wasn't on, Mr. Fuller, any of that. At the time, I just had personal reasons that I didn't want to drink anymore. And it wasn't even that I quit drinking. I just wasn't consuming alcohol very often. I would maybe drink once a month, and that was about it. And that was just totally unacceptable. And it was their aggression at, come on, we're having a staff meeting, we're going to go to the bar and drink, you got to do at least one shot. And it was them being so aggressive that pushed me to saying, okay, I have totally stopped drinking, so that they would stop asking. I was even thinking like the trick, like you have a glass and just say, oh, I already got my drink. For me, that wouldn't have worked, because they would say, oh, no, we got to get you another one. We got to get you a shot, or we got to get you a beer, or both. Just super aggressive. I don't know if that was just me, but that's been a pattern with the white people. Oh, okay. Yeah, I would say I would encourage folks to think about having a narrative already together around why you no longer drink. And I would tie it to something, either tied to something religious, alcoholism, something. I would have it tied, even tell it, probably couldn't do DUI, but I would tie it to something. A friend of mine got a DUI, and it was a really traumatic experience, and it just stopped me from drinking. And I would just be consistent with that so that they know every time, that way that it will completely eliminate them asking. Because I mean, wow, I've seen just them become extremely aggressive about the drinks. They'll buy 20 rounds. You being broke is not going to be enough to stop them. You can't even tell them that.
No. No. Like you said, they'll buy drinks, anything. They'll do anything to get you to go out and drink with them. And just like you, that's what started making me nervous. Like, why do you want to drink with me so badly?
But you're in a compromising situation, maybe. Maybe even make a pass. Maybe even, somebody was interested in you sexually. Who knows?
Yeah, till you get in trouble, and then those same folks are not going to be around.
Mm-hmm. I'll throw you under the bus in a second. I did have a question for the female guest.
Yes.
I was wondering, do you feel, and I've noticed this with white females, do you feel that part of their anger was the black male not being thrilled that she was throwing her hair on him and making a comment about the hair? Because, they really think that that's something that, they really think that of that as a big deal, like something they have. One of the, they just seem to really think that that's something that drives black men wild. And I wonder if him rejecting that had something to do with their anger. Do you think that had anything that added fuel to the fire?
Yes, I definitely think that had something to do with the way they reacted. And me and my brother have talked about this, and he said that he felt like one of the reasons why she even did it in the first place was because you had two natural hair black females at the table, and that maybe she had to use that as some way to say, well, I have this over them. I have the hair, or something like, I don't know, just to kind of pull him in, or he said maybe that angered her. Because
he was supposed to be awestruck and enraptured when she threw her hair and it touched him. They really think that that's a big. I've even been in the restroom, and I'll be at the sink, and a white female will come in to the bathroom and stand next to me, and you can tell when somebody's acutely aware of your presence. And so, I could just feel the vibe coming from her. She glanced over, and this has happened numerous times. Then all of a sudden, she bends at the waist, throws her head down, snaps her head back up. Now, I guess I was supposed to be impressed, but I deliberately didn't look. I just kept on like she wasn't even there. And they've actually gotten mad. So I've seen them with this pathetic insecurity. I mean, if you got it like that, why do you have to go there? So I think they feel very much in competition with black women. I think there's a tremendous amount of envy and insecurity regarding black women. And I've been out, and white women will demand black men pay attention to them, even if you're on a date with a black man, even if you're with a black man. Certain white women will demand that the black man pay attention to them. And I've seen this happen over and over again. So they are very, the idea that the black male could not drop everything he was doing and drop the black female and not pay attention to her and focus all his attention on the white female, to them is just, it's ego shattering. I don't know what it is, but they really seem to have this issue with black women and having to get the attention of black men, snatch the attention away from black women. I suspect that's why we see all these commercials. And a lot of the commercials and TV shows and movies now, white women are the CEOs and the CFOs and the presidents and stuff. I think that's why you see a lot of black women being degraded, black women having to be fat and unattractive. I suspect a lot of that has to do with racist women wielding her influence in the media.
Yeah, I think that you're definitely correct. I've actually had that happen to me in the bathroom when I looked at the mirror, and I'm not sure if the female was white or, but she had really long, like the white type of hair, really long black hair, and she swung it around and felt the need to once again say, I have this hair over you. And then at the restaurant, I do feel like the white female was upset that he reacted with disgust when she put her hair on him instead of him thinking that it was cute or funny or okay for her to mistreat him, or that somehow maybe she thought that he was going to think that she was flirting and that it was a good thing. But when he reacted negatively, I think that had a lot to do with why the situation happened the way that it did. And then when I said out loud, when I called their hair nasty, that could have possibly provoked the other white people on the other side of the restaurant to get upset.
Because even white males will be defensive of any kind of criticism of white female beauty, not because they're protective of the white woman, because they feel that need to be superior too. And if we don't think that women are superior, then that's a blow to them. But I've seen it just so many times where they do certain things that indicate that they really are in competition.
Yes,
I think that's also why black women are being demonized and vilified for wearing natural hair. Getting stopped in airports and all that. They love for us to wear these weaves and wigs and try and make it look like we're imitating them.
May I speak? Hello?
We can hear you. Can you speak up a little bit? You're coming in a little low.
Oh, I'm sorry. Because I just want to make a point about the hair, since you brought it up. Ever since I got my locks, I'm a very feminine female, tall, I'm feminine. Earrings, the whole. Every time there's some white woman or some white man just come up to me and say, "Excuse me, sir," and I don't look nothing like a man. But when I used to I didn't wear my hair natural, nothing. I never got any comments like that. But as soon as I get my locks and they started getting long, and they're beautiful to me, but they'll say things like, "Excuse me, sir," or "sir," and I'm like, "What?" And I just kind of blow it off. But I noticed that it's kind of like an insult, so a roundabout way of insulting you because you're wearing your hair natural or wearing locks. So that hair is a big thing. Yeah.
I hate when I have my hair in like an afro shape, and I hate when people try to put their hands on it, on my coworkers, and they don't even ask you, or they put their hands and then they ask you.
I think sometimes I wonder if the hair is such a big thing because they've been able to covet and take everything that we have, but maybe the hair they can't. They can try to get darker, they can try to get bigger breasts and bigger butts and bigger lips or whatever they're trying to do. But the hair thing, they got to be able to duplicate or imitate whatever we do. And maybe that's part of it, but I think a lot of it has to do with the hair thing has been a form of white supremacy all this time. And when black people reject the idea that their hair is better or superior, that's like rejecting white supremacy. And I think that's one reason they feel so threatened by it, particularly for black women.
Hi, Pumpkin.
I wanted to share something. This is 818. I was in a clothing store recently, earlier in the week, and I was shopping and looking at dresses on one particular rack. And it was one of the racks where, you can have, it's facing you, but there's two, prongs, the bars that hold them. So one was long dresses, and the one to the left of it was short pink tops. And I'm thumbing through the dresses, looking and looking. And from my peripheral vision on the right-hand side, I could see something pink was behind me. It was really close. You just know when someone's behind you or something is behind you doing something. I turned around really quickly, and there were two little teenage white girls behind me. And the one that was behind me looked stunned, and I immediately turned around and said, "What are you doing?" "Oh, I was just looking at the top." But the top was to the left side of me and in front of me, and I didn't see her over there. And so I sternly looked at her and said, "No, what are you doing behind me?" I just looking at her, "No, you're an inch away from me. What were you doing?" And I wouldn't let her get away with it. And so her little friend tried to front. She had her telephone up like she was taking a picture of the tops, and she tried to, think, "Oh, maybe she'll like it. I think she'll like this one. I'll send her a picture of it." And then they turned around and scurried out of the store, and I watched them all the way going out the door. They didn't turn around once. And something just, at first I was like, am I just tripping? I thought maybe they were doing that thing that I see people do on the Ellen DeGeneres show where they go up behind people and dance behind them and record it. but I didn't feel any emotion or anything. And when I turned around and looked at her, she looked scared. She didn't look embarrassed like she was caught doing something silly. You know, she looked like she was doing, like her reaction or expression on her face was like she got caught doing something she wasn't supposed to do. So I went back to shop and I started thinking, maybe they put something on my back or whatever. You know, we're trying to play a prank. And so when one of the employees of the store walked by, I said, excuse me, do you see anything on my back? And she says, no, I don't see anything. It was a non-white female. So then a non-white male who I had been talking to earlier, he goes, well, I don't want to be a snitch or anything, but I was putting clothes back and I saw them behind you, and it looked like she was trying to touch you or something. And I wonder, was she trying to touch my hair? Because of the fact that I could see, you know, her hand or finger, she had to be close to my head. And I wasn't wearing my hair out. I had on one of those, like, hair net kind of bonnets where, like, if you have a fro or if you have locks, you know, you put it in, it's kind of stretchy and it'll hold everything. So that's what I had on my head, but I don't know what possessed her to think she was going to get away or be okay with coming up and touching a stranger's head or hair. And when I went to the dressing room to try on the clothes, there was a little tuft of my hair in one spot on the side that was out. I didn't feel her touch me, but I suspect that they were trying to touch my hair. Maybe the other one was trying to record it. I don't know. But, like, if I had felt her touching me or caught her doing it, I probably would have hit her. But it's just amazing to me that even at that age, these little races are bold enough to go out and, you know, just be, like, assaulting black people and touching them for the purpose of touching my hair.
Mm-hmm. They're probably staring at it. Like,
no, I saw her fingers. That's the only reason I knew she was behind me, is because I could see something pink in the side of my peripheral vision, like near the line of where my eyes were, but behind me, so I turned around. She had her hand close to me. She was about an inch away from me, and the other guy was witness to it. So she was trying to touch me without me knowing it. But I've never felt tempted to want to go touch a white person's hair, ever.
Well, you know,
I'm not an air.
I'm sorry. I was going to say, I'm glad she didn't touch your hair, because I really didn't want to see you hit her. Because, you know, you'd be on the show next telling us, you know, about the experience of hitting these two young white girls, you know, so I'm glad they didn't touch you.
But, you know, just saying, just to think about it, like, I wouldn't go up to a stranger and do that. Because I would think if that person didn't like it, they might punch me in the mouth or something. You know, or it could cause issue, like, what was it about my hair that she felt so drawn to do something like that? And, I mean, you know, it wouldn't be so odd, although it'd still be creepy, because white people trying to touch your hair is creepy anyway. But it wouldn't be as big of a deal if it was a white person that, you know, I saw at a store someplace regularly that I would have conversations with, who was like, oh, your hair is cute. Can I touch it? Or, oh, it's so, you know, cute or curly or something, and then went to touch it. Like, I don't like white people touching my hair anyway, but at least that would be someone who had some type of acquaintance with me. But just to randomly go up to a black person you don't know and to put your hands on them in any way like that, you know, and as teens, so I was wondering, what do they do with the black children they go to school with, you know? It wasn't a good feeling. It really upset me. And I think the thing with that, it makes you feel kind of like some other, because I don't hear of them going up and doing that to other non-white people whose hair is straight, or, you know, trying to touch on your skin or stuff like that to see if the color rubs off. Just real ignorant, stupid stuff like that. And I'm thinking maybe that is part of their thinking, and whether it's consciously or unconsciously, I do think there is an intent to make us feel that way by doing those things to us. You know, even from the snide remarks before, well, I thought it was a snide remark, but one of the maintenance people that was working on where I live and said something about me being colorful and wearing, you know, colors that look good on me and liking me to some Amazon jungle princess or some stupid crap like that. Like, it wasn't flattering at all. Because I wouldn't hear him say something like that, you know, associate a white woman with a jungle princess or something from the Amazon, unless maybe she were wearing clothing that they associated with non-white people who they think come from jungles.
Yeah. I knew of a black male that he was in, matter of fact, it's in one of the Trojan Horse book. Part of the story was he was in class and one of his white classmates, a white male, he was dark-skinned black male with African features, and he touched his lips without even asking him and says, "How do you eat with those?" Mm. It's just a lack of respect for black people. They learn it at their mother's knee. They learn it as babies. I think it's intrinsic. I think it's just part of who they are, and they really don't regard us as worthy of being respectful, as being respected. Because a lot of stuff, I had ex-boyfriend, he was in his grocery store, and these two young white females, probably about the age of the girls that tried to touch you, they just walked by and squeezed his butt. Didn't say a word, just walked by and squeezed his butt and walked off laughing. Now, the more confused among us would think that was a compliment. Mm-hmm. But I would never go walk past any man, particularly a white male, and touch his behind. I mean, I just wouldn't do that. Even if I thought I was attractive, I wouldn't do that because it's disrespectful.
That seems like that mentality of ownership that they have. You know, like how they used to call older black males boy. Like, as old as you are, even the younger ones think they can mistreat you and you know, play with you, and you have no power to do anything back. Like, there's no consequences for them. I'd say the girls probably were somewhere between 12 and 14. The ones that were trying to touch me.
LBM, your line should be open as well. LBM.
Hey, good evening, everybody. I've been in and out tonight, but I've been hearing this last piece with these white females and the hair, and I'm you know, you really can't take your eye off of this white female. Now, how is it that this white female is laying with every Blackbird member that she can get a hold of, who has the same kind of natural hair that we have, the females have, but she can lay with that, but all of a sudden it's a fascination when it's on our head? That's ridiculous.
Yeah, good point. Because you would think they'd never seen the hair before.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't think of that. I think they just have a thing with black women. I mean, they just have a thing with black women. They're very, very something insecure. That's the only thing I can figure out. They just seem to be extremely insecure. I mean, if you go someplace and you're a reasonably nice-looking black woman, you're going to get more mean mugs from white women than you get from black women. Black women really, for the most part, don't really pay a lot of attention to white women. Right. Not in my experience, unless she's got something unusual on or she's with a black male. But white women are always paying attention to black women. But we walk around with them all day. We don't look at them, you know. We don't see the kind of hair that you see in the hair shampoo, so we're not looking at their hair for the most part. So, you know, they're average and ordinary for the most part. And we not really have any kind of idolation toward them. You know, they really don't catch the eye most of the time. But they have a fascination with us and a very overt hostility. Right. Sexual competition, oh my goodness.
Right.
They think that, you know, your sexual competition, even when they're with a white male, both of them will give you the mean look. It's almost like he's saying, you know, you shouldn't be looking better than my woman. They have
the same insecurity that they had when they were Missy on the plantation and wondering how it is that they were supposed to be at the top of this pedestal. And their man was running out getting, you know, the so-called, you know, pickaninny in the field. And they're still carrying that same insecurity.
I agree. The same hostility.
We really need to leave these people alone as much as possible. You know, to the extent that we have to work with them, go to school with them, do business with them, But, you know, on our own time, we really need to be distancing ourselves from them. And we'll start to see a change. When they see a change in our attitude towards them, you know, we'll you know, start to be able to make some kind of dent, you know, into this, you know, white supremacy thing, because they're not going to do anything. It's up to us to change our behavior.
I agree. I think the most powerful thing a black person can do, and I would say this to the males and the females, is the most powerful thing we can do right now is not have sex with white people. Just imagine black males deciding en masse, we're not having sex with any more white women. And black women decide, we're not going to be sexual toilets for white men. Right. I'm telling you, that would kick something off. It would kick off some bad stuff in them, but once and for all, they would show their hand. They would show who they really were. And I think spiritually, we amass so much power in just that one act. Not having sexual intercourse with white people would be the most single, powerful, easiest thing that we could ever do, because it requires you to do nothing. It doesn't even take money.
Right.
So I think black men in particular, brothers, this would be the most powerful thing you could do, because when you allow yourself to be dominated by the female of your enemy, there ain't no manhood left after that. And I think manhood is the one thing that they're trying to destroy. So I think the most powerful thing black men can do is to not have sex with white females. You cannot be dominated by the female of your enemy. It's bad enough to be dominated by the male of your enemy, but to be dominated and subjugated by the female of your enemy? And I'll put myself on mute.
Caller in via Brooklyn, your line should be open as well.
Can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Shooby-doo. I was watching Paul Mooney the other day on I forget what it was called on Netflix, but he part of it Know Your History. That's what it was called, Know Your History. But at one point during the routine, he was saying I don't know. It was like he was kind of like coming off like saying how like everything's gone crazy and people lost their minds and stuff. And he was saying that if black people leave, this equation, like if we left, he's saying if we leave the room, then everything big is going with us. He's like, big, penises, big breasts, he's saying like everything big is going to leave with us. I guess he was kind of trying to say like that white people need to appreciate us more or something on like, but on this kind of like really objectified level. Just kind of found it interesting and kind of pertinent, like, it's like all that objectification kind of becomes like, I don't know, it's like we're just at this kind of like we can't really see, like as a group, we kind of fall into this like really objectified kind of, I don't know, this endless cycle of not being appreciated, but kind of objectifying ourselves, and I don't know. It's kind of hard to see how we're gonna like be like, speaking to people that aren't really, really engaging in this type of conversation. Like how to like get the message out to people that aren't really already hooked up into that type of genre of looking at things. Like not just reducing ourselves to our parts.
Has anyone ever thought that attending, like before knowing anything about the cows, like attending to company parties or going with drinks with your coworkers and stuff like that, might advance your career in any way?
Are you saying, has anyone thought that networking would advance their career?
No, I mean like going to company parties or, I guess socializing with your coworkers after work, like going to bars or restaurants or anything like that, might advance your career before knowing anything about the cows, or before you were confused.
In my case, I was. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
In my case, I was becoming less confused while I was still in college, so I've never really been in that situation where I was unaware about racism. But I do believe that if non-white people go out with coworkers into company functions and drink with them and show their approval of them, I do think that they can get farther. So I just feel like it's a choice that non-white person would have to make on what price they're willing to pay. That's not a price I can say I'm willing to pay. I would just have to not get that promotion if that's what I had to do to get it.
Anybody on the line still going out to any venues where there are white people and alcohol?
Me, very. I don't remember the last time. I think the question though was, did we do it before we were less confused? I used to think it was a privilege. I thought it was exciting when I worked for corporate America, and we would go someplace, even though a part of me knew it wasn't. There was a part of me that felt like I was a part of something. I was here with all these corporate white people in front of other white and black people, and I felt like I was a part of something. Even though deep down inside I knew it was BS, I still felt that old training kick in, and I thought it was fun. And I thought that, when white people, when they started drinking, sometimes they were friendlier. Of course, that friendliness wouldn't last. But at the moment, that white validation was kicking in. And so, yes, I used to, when I worked for corporate America, I attended different functions. And I thought it was fun. But I don't do that anymore, partly because there's a different environment that I work in. But even if I worked for someone else, I wouldn't do it now. I just don't enjoy being around them to that extent that I want to relax and have drinks and be in a group of white people that I have to interact with. I just don't enjoy their company like that.
Yeah, I don't drink at all anymore. Like how you were saying, Gus. I just totally hung up my drinking. Just don't at all. But I used to be pretty white identified, I guess, and used to have a lot of so-called white friends, and I feel like it's like it's like in the drinking thing. If you are engaging in it of your own accord, and that's what you see as being a good time. I mean, from my personal experience, it's like there's kind of a built-in idea that you're going to hook up with a white person or somebody, and it's going to be a white person because, I mean, that's like, you know, normal, you know, like what you see in the commercials and everything and like, you know, on the sitcoms and whatever, like on the movies. But it's always like, you kind of always wind up being like odd man out, like, square peg in the round hole, and you just kind of, something just doesn't seem right, but it just happens over and over again. So I really appreciate having all the docs, you know, just kind of, you know, becoming more aware. So I don't feel that anymore, and I don't drink because I don't like it anyway.
Not trying to monopolize the conversation, but I totally understand what you're saying. Somewhere deep down inside, it didn't feel right. You felt that, you know, there was just something where you weren't really a part. You know, you were there, but you really weren't the way, you know, you weren't really perceived the way other white people were perceived. And you kind of knew it in your heart, in your gut. You knew it was something, you know, you knew you weren't really accepted. You explained it as well as I could, but I know exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I've seen people get drunk. You know, it's like I was going to school out in Northern California in the mountains with these, you know, outdoor recreation people and stuff. And it's like they would drink, you know, every weekend, every night, really. But like, oh my God, like they would like, you know, they'd have bonfires and they like. I remember this one couple, they were kind of like the king couple. They were just like the super coolest people, you know, and like, you know, everyone would go to their house and stuff like that. And I don't know, they probably had like, you know, came from rich families and stuff. But they would freaking, you know, they'd go to sleep super drunk, you know, and then they'd wake up and be like, oh man, we peed on each other. Like they would urinate in their sleep because they were so drunk. And they'd pee on each other, like in their drunken stupor, asleep. You know, I've seen people fall down cliffs and get their heads busted in and be like laughing about it. Look like they got mauled by a werewolf, like straight up. Like they looked like they got mauled by a werewolf. And I've seen this happen like multiple times. People fall flat on their face, you know, like. And just laugh it off, but then the next day they'll get some stitches and like, you don't need to be drinking. Period.
Sounds like pure savage.
Yeah, like the best it gets, you know?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of that where white people can consume large quantities of alcohol and still be relatively functional. They don't seem to be impaired. They go on the job, take care of things, whatever the case may be, where it just doesn't have the same impact on black people. Like many things, doesn't have the same impact on black people. I've seen a lot of the debauchery where it's the drinking and throwing up and all that. I saw a lot of that in Hawaii, which was real odd because, I mean, that's the island paradise. You're supposed to go and just relax and enjoy, but that's one of the places where I would say I saw the most alcohol consumption, like people just getting up, white people just getting up and drinking all day long. But yeah, I would say it's been my observation, even with that, I've seen way more white people who can drink that large sum of alcohol and still be functional. They can still practice racism, still be terroristic, still be functional, whereas black people, it does not have the same impact. They are not able to function with any logic, with any sense after the large doses of alcohol. That's another one of my observations.
I had a friend who joked that white people can drink like the way we can dance. They're on another level. I did go out one time to have a drink. It was not long after it was said on the cows not to, and I figured, okay, I'm only going to go in there. I'm going to have one drink. I'm not going to get drunk. And some white people, it was like a family, they sat at the bar and actually started speaking to me. And one of them said I kind of looked like Charles Barkley or something like that. I just got nervous, and I quickly left. I said, that's a sign. Gus is right. Yes. But I think, like what Pam said about them being able to sense, I know they can sense that when you work with them, but maybe sometimes they can sense it just when you're sitting there, because I had no idea why those people came and talked to me.
I think they can sense it when they don't even talk to you. They don't have to be a work environment. I've seen it where I've just had a casual interaction on a subway train. You know, just a looking at, you look at me and I look at you, and you look at me a certain kind of way, and I just get that sense that they can tell, or at least it feels like they can tell that you're not really one of the good ones. It's like it's three types of black people. It's like the good blacks, the suspects, and the niggas. And please don't get mad at me because I use the word niggas. I'm talking about the way that they see black people, not the way I see black people. But that has always been some kind of like a private joke between me and an ex-boyfriend, because he worked in state's attorney's office, and he talked about the same thing, that he was a suspect, but that black people they arrested were the niggas, so to speak. But he was always a suspect. He really didn't come across as one of the good ones. So I felt that way too, kind of like in the middle, where you haven't totally put me on the other side, but I'm definitely not a good one.
Talk about suspects. I remember a particular coworker, black male. He would like to hug a lot of the other female coworkers, particularly the white female coworkers. And I overheard many of the white men that were working there. They would get very upset over that, and they would start telling everybody, "Be careful of this guy. He likes to hug people a lot." And da 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 da. I thought it was interesting, but that was when I was confused at the time. I wish I knew about the cows then. But even when at the time it was because I always thought it was strange, because he just thought everybody liked him, and he would just go around hugging everybody. And then afterwards, I overhear him talking bad about him, that they don't like that. They didn't like that at all.
Rough, because if you're hugging them, they're complaining, and if you try to stay away from them, they complain.
It was particularly the white men. It was a particular one. He got really upset over that. This black man. But at the time, I didn't say anything to him for what they said. I just kept it to myself, but I overheard them.
Yeah, we're not in. I was just gonna say we don't need our inhibitions lowered. Our inhibitions are already pretty low. Didn't mean to cut you off there.
Oh, no problem.
I've got about 7 minutes left. If anybody has anything they want to get in before we wrap things up, 7 minutes.
Oh, is there any way I can get that place emailed to me through Gus, the restaurant it happened at?
Yes, definitely.
If the guest is still on?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. And I just wanted to thank everybody for listening to our story and what happened. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, same here. And I hope we can all share this particular broadcast, because a lot of our black people in general, but younger people, they're actually being misled into thinking that they're welcome at these white establishments from all the commercials. They really don't understand that how things can go bad real quickly. And so I hope that we all share this with other people, because they really need to be understanding that I think it's getting worse out here. I think white people are very angry. They're very frustrated. They're worried about their futures, and they're all being primed to blame black people. So I suspect a lot more hostility toward black people is coming as the economy worsens and as these messages to white people in mass go out. You know, the Zimmerman thing with his wife being arrested, making it look like black people are responsible for white people being victimized when we don't control anything anyway. So I think they're really setting the stage for massive scapegoating of black people. Some talk show host just called Obama, said he was the first monkey president. So they're sending out a lot of rallying cries and messages to white people in mass, you know, to be antagonistic toward black people. So we really need to spread that message that. Thank you.
About 4 minutes. Anybody else? Anybody else?
I don't know if you guys had mentioned it earlier really quickly, but I'm sure everyone heard about Rodney King dying. I had to go out for a while, so I don't know if you had talked about it.
I wrote about it in the chat room, but we haven't really discussed it. The trifling antics are out once again. Shouldn't be surprised by anything. Just you can imagine the chimp out folks and just regular white people are having a blast. You could check Twitter. His name is trending on Twitter, and you can see a lot of trifling commentary on Rodney King. They even drug Whitney Houston into it.
Wow.
Got about 3 minutes. Anybody else? Rodney King or anything else? Should have somebody from the talk show line as well. Last 3 minutes.
Right.
be thinking of prayer. We're getting ready to close out. I'm assuming everybody's good. Anybody else? Assuming everybody's good. All right. Be thinking of the prayer. We'll be back. Just check the show page for upcoming times, broadcasts. Be doing the reading, please, for Urugu. That definitely will be Friday, pages 350 through 420. 350 to 420 for this Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. And the compensatory calling will be on Saturday. But yeah, we should have broadcasts before then as well. Just check the program page, Facebook, all that good stuff, and you'll get all the updates. Again, thanks to our listener for coming on and sharing about just really ugly incident of terrorism. Really appreciate you taking some time out of your evening to share, and I think it will benefit and motivate a lot of non-white people to remain codified and aware of what's happening around them, and hopefully not lax on their duties and just being guarded. Anytime you're around white people, especially, heaven forbid, if they have been drinking, no time to be laxing on your codification. Anything you want to share before we wrap up?
No, I think that was everything.
Outstanding. I am using, they have this device, it's called Chirp Story, chirpstory.com, where you can grab different tweets that people have written and you can compile them all on one page, and you can like make a story and it'll have all of the tweets that you've selected. And I'm just trying to grab a lot of the trifling comments that white people have been making about Rodney King, and I'll just have that, so it'll just be one story where you can see a bunch of them. I don't know how many it is, but it looks like lots, more than 50. I will try to get that all compiled, and I'll put it on my Facebook page later today. Shadow from the Talk Shoe line, our female guest, if she emails me the name of the restaurant once we go off the air, I can pass it along. Or if she tells me the name, I could just put it on my Facebook page. That way it won't be connected with her at all. So that way anybody, because I know we have a lot of people who listen in the DC area, that way they will know. Make sure you do not patronize said place. So yeah, I'll try to do it that way so that as many non-white people as possible know where they should avoid. Really, my view would be, don't go out to the best of your ability. I think Dr. Kanban talked about that. It is mental illness. Malcolm X, really, this is not something new. Malcolm X said it many, many years ago. It is mental illness to be going out and paying money to give white people to go behind closed doors and concoct anything for you to ingest, given what we know about what it means to be a white person. So I would say try to reduce that as much as possible. You see, at least I see video all the time of white people putting stuff in people's food and just, all sorts of trifling antics just for other white people. So you can imagine that would have to grow exponentially if it is a white person doing the food handling and they're serving up to a non-white person. And Dr. Joe Fagan's commentary about restaurant racism. You put those two together. That study that came out earlier this year about the racism in the restaurant industry. That just should go without saying at this point. You really want to try and reduce that as much as possible. Keep your money in your pocket, fix your own food, or find a non-white place, preferably some black people, to get your food. Because, it's like playing Russian roulette, man. Every time you allow them to go behind closed doors to give you something to put in your mouth. That said, anybody want to do the prayer to wrap us up? Prayer volunteer? Right on. We will do the short one. That way I can get to work. This will... Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Did some... Yeah, we can hear you. Just speak up a little bit. I can hear you. Were you saying? I'm not clear. Maybe you were talking to somebody else. If you were talking to us, I couldn't really hear. If you could speak up a little bit. Okay. I'll assume the person wasn't talking to us. Right on. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Again, share if you think it would be constructive. I would definitely share with younger folks. I think it would really benefit younger victims to hear about this incident and hopefully to adjust their behavior, particularly when they're going to hang out and what have you. I think often it's very good when it's not only coming from parents or older family members and what have you, telling them not to do this or not to do that, when they can kind of hear from some outside sources, hey, it is a dangerous world out there on the plantation, particularly if you're a black person. So definitely share with non-white people and snatch some of those news reports. People should be receptive. What happened with Trayvon Martin, Bo Morrison, it's been too many things going on just this year alone. Snatch some of those news incidents and kind of let them know that they should really have some serious things on their mind when they go out, to be mindful of what's happening around them and to just try to make the best choices possible. Have your fun, but you want to be safe too. Live to have fun another day. We will be back just in a few days. Thank you for tuning in. Replace white supremacy with justice immediately. C.O.W.S signing out.